Hi, this is John Mitchell from Lonely Robot, Kino, Arena, It Bites, Far Too Many Bands, and you are listening to the Progcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Progcast. This is episode 65 already, and today we have the honor of a really cool guest from the UK. As you already heard, it's John Mitchell from Lonely Robot and many other bands. Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for asking. How are you, Dario?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to have you on the show, as I've been following your musical work for quite some time, and there's actually one burning question I always wanted to ask you. As you are prolific in many different areas of music, do you see yourself mainly as a guitarist, as a singer, or as a composer, or all of that together?
Well, I'd say composer. You know, I'm not particularly exceptional on anything except composing. Really, I don't. I try. You know, I've tried to learn to sing fairly well over, to a reasonable standard over the years. And guitar playing, I'm never going to be like a virtuoso player, or a technician from the. I just all these things. I simply see them as ways of getting the point across musically. So I would go along with the lines of composer. So Tesco Value, Peter Gabriel, Stroke, Lidl, Dave Gilmour, composer.
All right. That actually brings us to our usual opening question for our interviews. That is called "What's in your Walkman?" Because as a composer, I guess you also take some influences, or you also are a fan of some other bands and other music that which you are listening to. So we always like to hear what our guests have been listening to lately. Anything else? Anything that kind of stood out in the last days or weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time in a studio. So normally when I'm not in a studio, I tend to I like silence. But when it's, if I'm going on a car journey or if I'm going for a long walk, does it have to be prog?
No, not at all. It can be anything. Can be old, can be new, can be obscure, can be really well known.
Okay, well, I'm kind of a big fan of. I'll name two bands that I'm quite enjoying at the moment. One band is called Carpark North, and they're from Denmark. And they're kind of what are they? They're kind of like I suppose they're like a version of. They kind of sound. The guy singing sounds a little bit like Morton from a-ha, and they kind of got this sort of post-rock thing going on. But they also have the sort of electronic elements, and I really, really like them. And the album, I think it's called Carpark. It's got the song Berlin on it. I'm terrible with names, but the opening song of the album is called Berlin, and I really like that album. That's really good. And I've been listening to a lot of a band called The Midnight, who are like a synthwave band. So I've been listening to a lot of them. They've got an album called Endless Summer, which I absolutely adore. I've seen them twice live now, obviously not recently. But I think those are the two main things I've been listening to recently. I kind of, when it comes to prog, I hate to say, I'm a bit behind the times. All the sort of prog stuff I like was made, decades and decades ago. So I'm a little out of touch with what's going on Planet Prog, but I'm sure you're going to bring me up to speed this week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This morning, actually, I woke up with a song in my head from a very talented young band from Norway. They're called Umpfel, and they released their second album, As the Water Covers the Sea, last year. And the song that I was spinning in my head all morning today was Transcend. And it's a brilliant album, Transcend.
By Umpfel.
Umpfel, yes.
Okay, let me make a note of that, and I'll look them up. Umpfel, right? Yeah. Got ya. Right.
The the other my other entry for the What's in Your Walkman section this week would be a reminder of one of the best debut albums of the last 10 years of the last decade, and that's was Earthside's A Dream in Static. From the United States, and actually a young, talented Aussie lad called Liam Bradford, a 13-year-old drummer, reminded me of that debut because he was putting out a drum cover video on YouTube for the title track, A Dream in Static, where you also have like a crazy, amazing guest vocal performance of Daniel Tompkins from Tesseract.
Oh, okay.
So they're super symphonic, cinematic prog metal, and they've been working on their follow-up to that debut album ever since. And great band, also amazing composers, and definitely one of the biggest albums to look forward to that hopefully will come out later this year. That brings us, of course, also to a couple of your projects that you're planning to release some new music with. First and foremost, of course, that's Lonely Robot. And when this episode will be published, that's going to be on Thursday, the 16th of July. And then one day later, there's going to be the new Lonely Robot album called Feelings Are Good.
Yeah.
And it's the fourth Lonely Robot album. The three previous were kind of like they belong together as a trilogy, as the Lonely Robot trilogy. And
I didn't mean it to happen. It was kind of a complete accident. The whole thing has been a complete accident. Around about 2012, we did an album. I was in a band called It Bites. I suppose technically I still am in a band called It Bites, but certainly at the time we made an album called Map of the Past, and things didn't go exactly to plan, and I got very disheartened by music, so I didn't make music for a couple of years. And now since 2015 I've been making far too much music, so I should just calm down a bit and stop making albums. But no, I really enjoyed, when you find your stride and doing something like this, I know that it's the fourth album. Well, technically I see this as a whole new thing. It's like,
the new chapter.
New chapter. David Bowie stopped doing Ziggy Stardust, and he's gone on to his Let's Dance phase. So it's kind of that thing, and lots of people are. The thing was, when I spoke to the label, I kind of said, "Why don't we just call this John Mitchell?" And then no one's expecting to see any astronaut stuff or any space business. And he goes, "Well, we've established. I can't do the accent," but he said in a sort of, if I do the accent, it'll sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I won't do the accent. But my best imaginary German accent, he said, "Well, we've established the brand now. Let's continue making music." And I said, "Well, I'm not the record company. I'm just the lowly musician. So, yeah, let's keep making music, and you can call it whatever you want. I don't mind. You can call it Pizza to Go if you like. I'm happy as long as I get to make music." So that's kind of why people can call it whatever they want. At the end of the day, it doesn't really have anything to do. I mean, originally Lonely Robot was, I suppose, designed as a vehicle for me to sort of do spacey sounding, like film soundtracky kind of metal, rocky kind of ambient, etc., kind of that kind of thing. And now it's a bit different to that. So if people want to be confused by that, feel free. But it's at the end of the day, I don't really mind what it's called, as long as I get to keep releasing albums and people like them. So there we go.
Yeah, but that was an amazing description of the sound of the first three Lonely Robot albums, if there ever was one.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's how do you? Everybody wants to compare something to something else, don't they? Yeah. People feel very discomfortable if you can't draw a parallel between that and something else. I've always thought, well, the point of Lonely Robot to begin with was, I've been so much into science fiction over the years, and I love a lot of the soundtracks, and I love sort of modern. I mean, obviously, the modern classical music is, largely people associate film soundtracks with sort of the sort of modern, classical music of the day. I suppose, in the broadest term, is that's our Hans Zimmers have given us the most famous movie themes, and of course John Williams, etc., etc. And I love all that kind of stuff. I've grown up loving James Horner. and all those guys. So I kind of just wanted to take all elements of that and rock riffs, because I absolutely love Rammstein for some reason. Well, not for some reason. It's just unusual. People find that odd that I would like Rammstein, but I do. I find them quite amusing in a sort of cartoonish way. So I kind of want to fuse elements of like rock riffs and film soundtracks and a sort of kind of very Zen space metaphor running through the whole thing. And then I decided to shoot all that and get rid of it and throw it in the sea and do something a bit different.
To conclude talking about what Lonely Robot has been for the first 3 albums, I wanted to ask you about the movie, the animated movie thing that you released not too long ago for the last album, Under Stars. How did that come about? And because I thought it was kind of, it was a worthy climax, so to speak, for this chapter. Well,
that was kind of the point of it. I mean, I really wanted to draw a line under the space side of things. And when we, every time I've done an album, like the first album, I did a little mini acoustic gig at the Lexington in London, and various members of the press and friends and family and the people that played on the album kind of turned up, and it was a really fun evening. And the second album, I think I did a gig to launch it at Sub 89 in Reading, which is where I'm from. And that was great success. It was a sold out gig and it was really, it was a brilliant evening. And for the third one, a chap at the label said, why don't we, this sounds really good. Why don't we release this at a cinema? And, because cinemas famously have brilliant sound systems, don't they? And everything sounds really expensive and amazing in cinemas. And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. What's going to be on the screen? And he said, well, it's going to be a static image. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. Hold on a minute here. We need a film. Let's make a film to go on the screen. Because I thought, he said, well, when we had Steve Hackett doing this, he played the album. There was just a big picture of the album cover. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. I want to go one better. So we made this little mini film just to go along. At the end of the day, I really didn't have a lot of time to be in any videos at the time. And I spoke to Miles, the chap that does the videos. He does a lot of videos for various different bands. And I said, he loves animation and sort of computer-generated CGI FX and all that. And I said, look, I really haven't got time. Well, I wanted to take, because obviously doing videos and filming them is quite time-consuming. And I just remember being quite busy doing other things at the time. I said, so can you make various videos just featuring kind of CGI people and astronauts and stuff, and just make it look as cool as possible, and so that I don't have to be in it and pretending to know what the words are to my own music. But clearly, I'm far too busy to learn my own words. And he said, no problem. And then I said, why don't we do the whole album? And of course, he got very excited because he loves, he loves working. He loves the thing that he does for a living, and he loved the idea of some of his work being shown at a major London cinema. So, his ego got the better of him. And before we know it, we've got an entire film to go alongside the whole album, and which was an incredible thing. And I never thought anybody would go for it. And to this day, I have no idea how much he got paid. But I think it was more of a labor of love than anything. Yeah. So we we launched it at a cinema, and we had a Q&A, and we had a guy because it was a bit, spacey. We had Alex Milas, who's a friend of mine, sort of asked me about, because there's various bits on the first 3 Lonely Robot albums with references to sci-fi films, sort of little nods towards certain musical themes. And we had a Q&A about that. And then a guy from the ESA came up and talked about space for a bit. It was a really great evening. And then we did it again at another cinema, which was even more fun. So, and then about, obviously this whole COVID thing started happening, and everybody else was like filming themselves in their kitchen with acoustic guitars. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want my film online. So, and I convinced the guys at Inside Out to just put it online because, obviously, being shown at 2 cinemas, twice, a couple of hundred people probably. But, I thought it would be nice if everybody saw the whole thing. And that's why we put it online, to entertain the troops during lockdown.
I certainly enjoyed it very much.
Good.
Yeah, moving on to the new album. Finally, feelings are good. What was different to the writing and recording process compared to the previous albums?
Well, I mean, I'll start with the recording process. Basically, the sound of the first 3 Lonely Robot albums, I suppose, is fairly similar in that, I use a lot of the same instrumentation and some of the same sounds. I think I used a program called Omnisphere, which to all the keyboard people out there will recognize as being a sort of very sort of ambient, synthy kind of VSTI, virtual instrument. So I used that quite a lot on the first 3 Lonely Robot albums. This time round, I basically deleted everything off my hard drive, formatted my hard drive, in fact, and started again. So I would never, I think I just the software. I had a deal with a company called not a deal, rather an endorsement with a company called Arturia, and they make virtual instruments. And they sent me this thing called Analog Lab, which is really cool, kind of retro synth bundle. So you get all the completely different sounds I'd never used before. And so I just didn't want to use any of the same keyboard sounds that I'd used on the first album at all. And so, yeah, that was great. And there's a lot more sort of, I suppose, vintage sounding keyboards on this than there have been in the previous. This is less ethereal and more quirky in terms of some of the keyboard sounds. I grew up listening to bands like The Cars and Mr. and sort of a new wave music. So I wanted to sort of channel a bit of that in this album. So, I used quite a lot of those kind of sounds. And the drums sound completely different as well on this album. On the first 3 albums, they sound quite heavy metal. And on this, they're a bit more real sounding. Do you know what I mean? So we approach that differently. It's it's just a bit more sort of not lo-fi sounding album, but just a bit more sort of a bit less sheeny and metally, So I was kind of happy to go down that road. And in terms of the songwriting, well, I write the music that I write, and I do have a kind of distinctive style. But this time I wasn't singing about, are human beings from planet Earth, or we all, it was more about, well, this happened to me when I was 12 and I hated that woman. It's more sort of, it's more kind of down to earth and, and sort of channeling my sort of, in that angry public school person.
We already had the opportunity to like everyone had the opportunity to listen to 2 singles so far. Life is a Sine Wave was the first, and then Spiders. Are they gonna? Is there gonna be a 3rd single before release, or that's?
Well, funny enough, I was talking about this morning. Whilst it's obviously been very difficult to do anything, do normal things like shoot normal videos during lockdown. We basically, I kind of used my studio to film some sort of, footage of myself attempting to sing or be creepy in front of a camera. And we did it for 2 videos. And the next video we're hopefully going to do, if Miles isn't sick of me by the time this comes around, I keep ringing him every day, making sure that he's got so many things on that I think he overstretches himself a little bit, but I've certainly set my attack dogs on him this morning, and hopefully, all being well, Keeping People as Pets will be the next song to be released prior to the album coming out. And I suppose, what's the date today? It's the 8th, and the album comes out on the 17th. So the clock is ticking, Miles, and if you listen to this, I'm watching you.
Funnily enough, I had the album for 2 days now, and I was able to listen to it like 2 or 3 times, and that was the one song that kind of stood out from the first spin for me, Keeping People as Pets.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, actually, because the way you sometimes write music. I remember, like I said, I installed this Arturia vintage synth bundle onto my computer, and I loaded one of the instruments, and I just pressed one key, and that amazing sound came out. I thought, right, I'm going to write a song around it. So the whole thing was just based around me pressing one button, which is kind of how Pink Floyd did their, that thing, what is it, On the Run? Where Roger Waters he presses a button, then twists a knob, and that's the whole song. So there we go. Thank you, Roger, for inspiring me.
Is it one of these days?
One of these days, is it?
Yeah.
Was it the one on Dark Side? Where it kind of modulates and it's got the hi-hat pan. Is it on? I'm getting confused. You're the Progspert.
The Progspert, okay. I'll have to think about that one. Yeah, great. I mean, Feelings Are Good is coming very soon on the 17th of June. That rhymed. July. I'm confused with the month since the lockdown.
Time is meaningless. Tea time more so. I think Douglas Adams once said or something.
But looking further down the calendar of the year, there's still some live dates in December announced and still in the air, or are they cancelled already?
I don't know. I've got my finger above the nukes, so it could go either way. No, I don't know.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think that the likelihood of anybody doing any concerts this year is very slim. I had these gigs have been rearranged, and this all happened before the COVID thing. I was supposed to be going on tour in October with Arena. That's not happening now. That's been put back a year. I'll be very surprised if they do go ahead. Obviously, the social distancing. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing, really, isn't it? How can you go to a gig and stay 2 meters? Well, actually, it's a prog gig, so it is probably quite possible to stand 2 meters away from anybody, because prog is kind of a niche market, isn't it? Unless you're Stephen Wilson, it's a bit difficult to make it look like a Rammstein concert. But no, true. And I don't have any fans, so it's probably not too easy to do a socially distanced concert for me. But nonetheless, in December, I'd like to think it could happen. We've got the little sticker on the front of the album, and it says where the dates are. So with all the best will in the world, we'll just have to see what happens. See how it looks at kind of October time. And if it looks like it's going to happen, then hurrah. And if not, I don't know. I'm not, I'll just go and have Christmas instead.
Yeah, you just mentioned already the postponed Arena tour. And the album for that tour, Theory of Molecular Inheritance, is already announced as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? I didn't even know that's what it's called. There we go.
So I think it was Clive Nolan's birthday 2 days ago or something like that.
I do know that it was his birthday because I did wish him a happy birthday on the actual day. I wasn't late. I was on time for once. So I know it's his birthday. I didn't know that's what the album was called, though. So now I know something. In the birthday posts on the Arena Facebook page, I saw that the album is ready to record and everything. But obviously, if you didn't even know the name, you probably don't know if the album is gonna be pushed back for next year as well. I know that I've contributed some guitar riffs to the album, and I did some work with Mick Pointer at the start of the year towards that end. I just don't know the big concepts and all that. I don't know. I never know what the big the vibe is behind. I'm merely a passenger on the good ship Arena. It's Clive Nolan's baby, so he kind of has more of the intel. You find out all these highfalutin ideas afterwards about what it's all about, and so I didn't know that that's the album title because no one's told me. But now that Theory of what?
The
Molecular what?
Molecular Inheritance.
Oh wow, that's a mouthful right there. Feelings Are Good. See, it's much snappier title.
Absolutely, so there's gonna be at some point more music with your involvement coming up from the Arena camp as well.
Yeah, I mean, the guys in Arena are like family to me. I've known them my entire adult life. I joined Arena when I was about 22 years old. I lied my way to get into the band. I was told that the minimum age requirement was 25 and the minimum height requirement was 6 foot, and I didn't fit either category, so I lied on both counts to get into the band. And I've been in that band ever since. And it's a very different style of music to the sort of style of music that I would probably listen to. It's quite gothicy and quite doomy, and and there's lots of church organ, and it's very grandiose, and it's quite creepy in places. It's very much a sort of a product of Clive's imagination. I've known the guy a long time. I love playing guitar. We've always had, I love going on tour with those guys, and it's been a massive part of my life. But I'm not the main writer in Arena, and that's kind of Clive and Mick's department. So the way Arena writes music is everybody writes riffs and comes up with little ideas and little segments of music, and you throw it all into a big musical dustbin or cement mixer, and Clive gives it a good spin and then glues it all together, and that's then he writes the lyrics, and then etc. etc. I do know that we have a photo shoot tomorrow, presumably a socially distanced photo shoot, and so I'm aware of that. So now I know we've got a photo shoot, and I now know what the album's called. So I'm winning at life.
Yeah, one step at a time, right?
Yeah, not too much. Don't give me too much information. It might blow my mind.
Well, I would like to hear a little bit more information from your side. I mean, there's even more different musical projects you're involved in, as you already teased at the very beginning of this episode. I love the use of the word project, because whenever you say project, I think of a man making a nice oak table in his shed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Lonely Robot is not a project; it's a lifestyle. My oak table that I am making, that's a project. But no, certainly in terms of the other things that I'm involved in, we're in the middle of doing. I've got too many bands, as I said in my snappy ident. I'm also last year we started writing another Frost album, and in January we actually started by hiring an old converted barn in Cornwall. So we wrote 5 songs in 6 days, the basic ideas for 5 songs in 6 days, and then in January we hired a Coast Guard lookout tower in the most southerly point in England, which is next to a nuclear power station. We spent a week there, writing some very bleak, depressing music, which I'm very excited about. And we've started recording it. I put some guitars down on some of the songs, and hopefully that's going to be out next year. So that's another thing. If you like what I do, that's another thing, I suppose, to look forward to. And it's again, it's largely Jem's baby, but it's always the way that he writes music is sort of more in tune with the way that I suppose I write music. So it's the collaborative process is very enjoyable for us too, and we have such a laugh doing it. So even if we don't get any music written, at least we've had a good old chuckle.
Awesome. But there has been already a release from the Frost Camp this year. That was the Others EP. But as far as I understood, those were kind of more or less leftover tracks from the Falling Satellites sessions.
Yeah, they're kind of things that Jem finished off on his own. They're kind of. I've heard it. It's very Jem. It's very over the top. It's very Frost. I can't personally say that I was particularly involved in that in any way. In fact, I wasn't involved in it at all. But, nonetheless, it was kind of like a stopgap thing before we do the next album, the next proper album, as it were. But yeah, they're kind of ideas left over from Falling Satellites. It makes for some very interesting listening. As far as Exhibit A is a particularly brilliant song. And I love Jem and his writing. And that is a fantastic example of that.
It kind of got me on the wrong foot a little bit with really abrasive keyboard sounds, and it was like not an easy listening experience.
No. If you wanted easy listening, man, you should be listening to Sinatra or Michael Bublé, not this.
Yeah, you already also mentioned It Bites. Is there anything on this band that is going on? I think I read something about some re-releases or anything. But
yeah, I mean, there's been talk of us doing something for years and years and years, and basically, like I said, in 2012, we sort of came to a bit of an end. We didn't come to an end. I just didn't want to do anymore because it was nothing to do with any of the guys in the band. It was like there was a third party that was involved in the band that was making some very bad decisions on our behalf, of which I wasn't involved. And I felt quite demoralized about the idea of being in a band. You know, when you're a kid and you're in a band, you kind of think about it as a democracy, and you kind of, when you're the guy that's largely the guy responsible for writing the songs, and somebody else in the background is sucking your will to live.
Wow.
You kind of think, I don't want to do this anymore. But that's nothing to do with the guys in the band. We've talked it out millions of times. Bob and I, we've known each other a long time, and we've got some very different ideas about things in life generally. But I've always respected the guy. He's a great drummer. He's a great musician. He's a very funny guy. And John Beck, as I say, I've written some of my, what I think, had the most fun times in the studio writing. So, to be perfectly honest with you, it's probably taken me to go absolutely megalomaniacal and write all this music on my own, and to realise I actually do really enjoy collaborating with other people. I think you have to go through the process of self-discovery, as it were. I've been in bands all my life, and there's so much diplomacy and politics involved with being in bands. It's quite exhausting. But it's also pretty exhausting just sitting in a room, writing music on your own with no one to talk to and going slightly mad like Robinson Crusoe. So I've kind of come round to the idea that, we are doing another It Bites album, because I've signed a contract and somebody paid me some money. So now I have to do it, even if I don't want to do it, unless, of course, I run away and jump on a ship and escape, the legal department of Inside Out, which is very unlikely because I can't be. So, yeah, we are doing a new album. And we are releasing Tall Ships on vinyl for the first time because
that was the one I saw.
Inside Out started doing vinyl exactly around the same time that we did Map of the Past, because it became hip to buy vinyl again.
Yeah, that album Map of the Past is still one of my favorites. And actually, with that album, I kind of when I looked at it again now preparing this interview, discovered that there's this funny little exit song at the end, and you seem to like doing that in a lot of albums that you write, including the Lonely Robot albums.
Yeah. massive musical cliche. I do the same thing every time. No, I like, some people, a lot of prog bands, I'll tell you something, right? A lot of prog bands I've noticed start the album with a very low string, don't they? And then some atmosphere creeps in. In fact, I reckon over 150,000 prog bands have released albums that start with a low string noise. And I don't like that. I mean, this album I started with a vocoder. Previous album I started with a Blade Runner. I like the idea of winding an album down gently. It's like peaks and troughs. I suppose I'm trying to think what the other albums I've ever done have ended like. I can't really remember, but yeah, it is a thing. I quite like ending albums in a low key fashion, and I think it probably started with that. I can't get out of the rut that I've created for myself in starting an album quietly and ending an album quietly. Now you've brought it to my attention and you've figured me out. I'm gonna end the next album, whatever it is, presumably the It Bites album, with a death metal song, just to prove you wrong.
I have one more recommendation for you in that department, and that is a Greek prog rock band called Verbal Delirium. And a couple of years ago, they had an album called The Imprisoned Words of Fear.
Wow.
And the last song on the album is also quite like 8 or 10 minutes, and it's like very, very dark, low-key synth stuff, and then suddenly blast beats, and that's so brilliant, this song. Now that you say that you might want to have a listen and take some inspiration from there.
Okay, and they're called, remind me what they're called. They're called
Verbal Delirium.
Verbal Delirium, and the song is called
In Memory of Nothing, I think.
In Memory of Nothing. Well, you are the prog spurt. I shall listen with haste in due course.
I'm gonna put all those songs we mentioned, like from the What's in Our Walkmans section, into a Spotify playlist, and
Okay.
I would also love to put some of your own favorites from your own discography in there.
Okay.
Particularly, of course, from the Lonely Robot albums. And of course, I'm going to start the playlist with the new singles for Feelings Are Good, with Spiders and Life is a Sine Wave, as this interview is, of course, mainly to focus on the new release from Lonely Robots. But yeah, you can feel free to also add some Arena, It Bites, Frost, Kino, whatever you want in there. If you want, just give me a couple of like, I don't know, 5 to 10 songs. You can write them. You can have think about them and then write.
Yeah. I'll put it all into written word. I'll put a big wax seal on it and I'll post it to you.
Yeah, hopefully that will be fast enough to include it in the playlist for next week.
Describe this as what's on your Walkman. I thought, man, if we're going to go back to 1980s in the Walkman, I'm taking it back to the 1700s with my wax scroll.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly love to have a letter from John Mitchell with a wax seal. I would frame it.
Excellent. All right, then I'll do that.
We'll put it here on the studio wall from the Progcast.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. I think that was a really fun chat, and we had lots of cool insights into your into what you're up to musically.
Cool. Yeah, far too much.
Well, all the better for us.
I need a holiday, but actually I don't, because like I said, since this lockdown started, I've just basically been lying in a hammock and reading books. So I've finally given my brain a rest. And the funny thing about these albums is, of course, I finished recording this album in January, and it's taken until July for it to get released. So I've forgotten all about it. I'm just thinking about what the next one's going to sound like,
Yeah, now that you have to write the It Bites album, it's probably good that you...
Yeah, there's a guy here with a contract and a gun. So if I don't get started soon, there's going to be trouble.
All right, John, thank you so much for joining us today for the Progcast. I had a great time. Wishing you all the best with the release for Feelings Are Good, and hope to see you with any other release in the future, and hopefully also in the future, maybe next year, on stage again.
Hopefully that will be the case. All things depending. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
As always, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and listen to great music.
The Progcast is a production of Stuus Media and is recorded at the Moonbase Studios in Munich. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stengel-Lewis, Blake Lewis, Kai Metzner, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant.